one of the mantras for Ohio State football. It goes beyond football. I guess the Ohio State community is pay it forward. Woody Hayes started it. Ohio State players and really anybody associated with the university lives it. Ryan Miller, former teammate of Stan Jackson's, linebacker, has taken that to the nth degree in his post-football life with the Second and Seven Foundation. And busy week for Ryan this week with the youth football camps that have been going on, I guess the last day today, and then 8-ball tournament coming up tomorrow. So we thought we'd have Ryan on to talk about the good things that he's doing. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Matt, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I just hope my wife is tuned in to hear those nice things you just said about me.
Well, that's I will anytime you need me to place a call, Lauren, I'll do that. That's fine. Hey, Ryan, let me ask you about, first of all, the football camp I've been following during the week on social media. Some of the stuff you've been tweeting out. You had the zoo out there for the kids, and it looks like you had a lot of fun this week, huh?
Yeah, it's you know what, it's one of those kinds of things where we started it 19 years ago, and I know we talk about football and we teach football fundamentals, but it's almost turned into more of a leadership camp. And you know, the last 3 days we talked a lot about teamwork, we talked a lot about leadership, and we talked a lot about respect for one another. And so it's no surprise that it grew from 40 campers 19 years ago to now we have over 400 kids that are out running around between the ages of 6 and 14, boys, girls. We have some children with some special needs. It's just a great positive thing in this Columbus market for children to be able to be exposed to. And you know, I think that once we started this, me, Mike, and Luke, you know, that 19 years ago, we always said if we keep our heart in the right place, good things happen. And I know that's what we've done, and it's grown significantly through the years.
For people that aren't familiar with Second and Seven Foundation, it's talk a little bit about your mission in literacy and what exactly you all do.
Well, basically, when we started Second and Seven, it was a small idea. We wanted to try to continue that pay-it-forward mentality that you were speaking about after we'd graduated. And so that first year, our first event was a little football camp, and then we raised enough money to buy books to then go to second grade classes and read to them. And at that point, it was just me, Mike Vrabel, and Luke Fickle. And we had enough money after the first year to go to 7 second grade classrooms. And so we called it Second and Seven for second graders of 7 classrooms. And then since then, it just continued to grow to the point where we couldn't physically go to all the classrooms that we had all the books for. And at that time, Gene Smith was a brand new AD at Ohio State. Now, I'll never forget, we sat down in his office and we told him, Gene, you know what keeps us up at night? We've been doing a great job with these football camps, different fundraisers, and buying books, but man, we just don't have the capacity to read to children, and we'd love to be able to have the athletic department help us out. And he was so excited and so on board, and he devised a game plan that every Thursday and Friday at 10 a.m., student athletes from Ohio State read to second graders in the Columbus, public schools and the southwestern city schools. And so 10 years ago is when that started, and it just continued to grow. And so from there, it continued to blossom. So now we're in 152 different universities and high schools have their student athletes read to second graders in over 24 states. So it's been pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, man, not only that, Ryan, give the rest of the story about the books.
Yeah, and then, one of the cost-saving mechanisms was, and Stan alludes to this, I mean, we decided 11 years ago that one of the things we could do to save money was, instead of buying books off the shelf, why don't we try to go ahead and write our own children's books and have them illustrated so we can control the messaging. So that was just world-changing for us as well, because now we can even print more books and control the message. So we have great message and themes with our hog molly characters, which is a phrase that Coach Cooper used to call the offensive linemen. And so we created these 4 hog molly characters that go along these different adventures and journeys and talk about kindness is contagious, or patience, practice, and persistence. We talk about teamwork, doing the right thing. This next one coming out is all about manners. So these are great themes that we get to reinforce within the classroom. And it's like I said before, you're obviously touching those second graders, but the student athletes that read to the second graders, I'm convinced they get just as much out of it as the children they're reading to. Well,
just looking at some of the pictures at the football camp with your guys, Jonathan Cooper holding the kangaroo, and Keandre Jones was out there, with a lot of the kids. The interaction, even doing that, and of course the reading aspect of it as well. I mean, guys, Coach Meyer talks about it, that a lot of times guys he loves seeing guys get out in the community and get it. You get to at an event like that, and you realize the impact that you can have, and it's good that these Buckeyes currently, Ryan, through your program, are starting to understand that.
And it's funny, Matt, when you're on the front lines and you see it, like I've seen it the last 3 days, and I see these guys and the girls at the Ohio State University and the Department of Athletics as they read. As a former Buckeye, obviously you're proud when they win a game or they beat Michigan or they win a national championship, and that obviously makes you proud. But there's nothing that makes me more proud than to see these guys get out there and treat these kids like they're the only person in the world. And it's going to leave an impact, and their sphere of influence is something that they don't even understand right now because they're still 20-year-old kids. But once they continue to be involved in these kinds of activities that Coach Meyer gets them involved in and that Gene Smith and Ohio State allows them to expose themselves to, it just changes their perception or maybe allows for them to have a better perspective on their life. So I'm more proud of the Buckeyes today than I am maybe even this fall because of what they are able to do in the community.
Talking with Ryan Miller, Stan's former teammate, Second and Seventh Foundation has had a football camp all week. I want to ask you, though, tomorrow night, right, is the 8-ball tournament. Is that correct? That's
correct. And that, was an idea that Braves came up with when he was in New England. Tom Brady invited him to an event. It was a pool tournament. And Mike said, wow, this thing was really cool. We should try to start something in Columbus. So 15 years ago, we did the same thing. And at that time, you only had 8 teams that competed against one another. And then you got a chance to get this little trophy. And it was a big fundraiser for Second and Seven to buy more books. And through the years, like the football camp has grown. Now we have 32 teams, an enormous bracket. It's double elimination. Stan's been there a number of times. He can speak to it. It's one of the more enjoyable events. You can buy individual tickets where years past you couldn't, but you can now. It's at the North Market tomorrow night from 5 to 11. It's a great time. You go to secondand7.com/8ball if people are interested in buying an individual ticket. But typically, corporations buy teams and they compete against one another for the right to be called the 8-ball champ.
Listen, Matt, I often bring up that I don't like how Ohio State uses the NFL for recruiting players. These are the things that they should use more for recruiting. Guys like Ryan Miller, who are productive members. Not only is he running Second and Seven, he's got M2 Marketing. Him and Megan McCabe started. So if you need any internet marketing, Ryan is your guy. Because all of us can't go on to play in the NFL, but you could be very successful in this community. So not only is he an entrepreneur, obviously he's giving back a ton. And every event that they do is a fun event. He also has the Derby that they do around Kentucky Derby in March, right? That's when the Derby's done, right?
Yep.
And they're all just
Stan,
great events.
It's fun, Stan, because, and Stan's been around a long time, so he's seen how our events run. But, we're fortunate to go to a lot of different events through the years, and we always love the quote-unquote VIP hour. Well, we've decided that every one of our events, for the entire time, it's a VIP, and that's how we treat everyone, and it's unlike anything you've been to. The 8-ball shootout is one of our fun type of events, and typically Mike and Luke get back for that particular one, and Coach Meyer typically swings by, and it's always one of those kinds of events that the former guys come back, and it's almost like a reunion of sorts, and we get a chance to catch up and then continue to share stories of how we can try to make a difference in our communities.
Hey, Ryan, one last thing. You had the football camp with youth this week, and there's been a lot of conversation. We actually had a tragic story that Stan and I were talking about yesterday with the Washington State quarterback Tyler Helinski, who committed suicide. They did an autopsy, had CTE. His parents are talking, and that's been a large topic of conversation, obviously, safety of football. But when you're teaching youth football, how important is, teaching the fundamentals the right way, tackling the right way, given the research that has come out about the game? And I imagine you're very careful about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a great topic of conversation. It's something that every parent should get engaged and have that kind of conversation. And for us, the youth football camp, it's a non-contact setting. You're keeping your head out of it. And so there's nothing really dangerous in that setting. However, when you're talking about now youth football and kids that are going to be tackling, it's super important for those coaches to be certified and making sure that they're properly teaching the kids the right way to make a tackle and keeping their head out of it. I think coaches have done a much better job through the years of not having as much contact in practice as they typically would have when maybe I was a kid or when Stan was a kid. So I think it's evolved in a good way. And I still think there's a lot of conversation and a lot of research that continues to be done in that space with those tragedies that we unfortunately keep reading about, like out at Washington State. But my general response is, as long as you, as a coach, are doing the right thing and teaching the kids the proper technique, keeping the head out of it, football has given me and guys like Stan so much,
right?
So many positive things. I don't want to throw that in the garbage because we're afraid to think about the dangers that are potentially down the road if a kid were to play 20 years of his life in the sport of football, which is typically not the norm. I look at some of the third and fourth graders that are just starting to play tackle football, and I think that the way that they're teaching it these days is significantly better than maybe when I was a kid. I don't see any more bull in the rings and any of these crazy things than when I was a kid. So I think that it's heading in the right direction. I hope we don't see more and more of these types of stories that we did out in Washington State.
Yeah, and truth be told, Ryan, I think football probably is as safe as it's been. I mean, because of all some of the rules we don't like. People get upset when somebody gets thrown out of the game for targeting, but some of those things have made the game safer, have they not?
I would agree. I think this is as safe as it's been at every level, and especially down at the youth level, and that's where a lot of the parents are just starting to be exposed to it. There has been a growth of flag football, and
right.
Again, you got to teach kids the proper way of pulling a flag too, because you don't want to get your head in there, because it's just as dangerous if you're going to get a knee to the face without a helmet or anything on. That doesn't really do anything for a kid as well. So teaching those proper fundamentals at a young age is the right way to go. And, a lot of times I would rather a kid determine if they like the contact sport like football at a young age as opposed to showing up when they're in 8th or 9th grade when they're bigger, stronger, faster. And now it could be a little bit more dangerous than it is when it is in 3rd grade.
All right, Ryan, we really appreciate the time. Great job throughout not just this week, everything that you do, we appreciate it. And again, if people are interested in going and checking out the pool tournament, where do they need to go online?
It's pretty basic. It's just all spelled out, secondand7.com/8ball, and they can get themselves a ticket, and we hope to see everyone tomorrow night.
Beautiful. Ryan, thanks for the time. Appreciate it very much.